Welcome to the May SmartAbout, and we're in North Wales, or is it West Wales? We're in Wales and at Porthmadog in the harbour, and we're spending a little time down here. You've got the boats, we can't get you any planes, but we can get you here some trains. The Ffestiniog Railway asks you to arrive about half an hour early for your train, and as a result you get to use the facilities on the platform like the cafe, and you also get to see the train itself that you're going to be travelling on, which is one track away from you as you stand on the platform. An engine comes down from the engine shed, it couples up to the train, and you get a chance to see the kind of carriages you'll be travelling in as they're paraded past you, and the train is taken up the line and reversed back down onto the platform where you will board. Once everybody's aboard the train, it sets off across Britannia Terrace, which is a narrow causeway containing the railway tracks and the roadway, the way in and out of Porthmadog. A couple of things I need to explain as we set off. First of all, you have to book a compartment, and Ruth and I had one to ourselves, but that's how it works with COVID. The restrictions allow you to book a compartment, and of course all the coaches in use are of the compartment type. Secondly, we had two cameras in our compartment. I was filming out the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the train. I wasn't always looking forwards, sometimes I was looking backwards, so I hope you don't get disorientated by the views that I'm going to show you, but they're well worth the look, whether you're into the scenery of Snowdonia or you're a bit of a railway buff and you like to have a peek into the engine sheds or some of the other railway items that are up and down the track. You may have noticed that in the last week we've had some very mixed weather, and it was changing literally every 10 minutes when we were on this train ride. It was a fairly overcast day with a lot of cloud, but occasionally the sun would peek through and light up one of the mountains ahead or the grass below us. It would start raining, particularly when we got out to have our refreshments, and a bit of sleet as well, all within a couple of hours journeying on this train. So in watching these pictures taken at slightly different times along the track, you will see a variety of different light levels, colours, and we did try to avoid the rain because you don't see a lot in the rain, but the rest of the journey, very mixed weather. The train steams into Ffestiniog, but it doesn't actually stop to let people off here. It does make a brief halt, and I'll tell you more about why later on, but it then proceeds on to Ffestiniog, where there's a spiral being created by volunteers in the 70s that takes you around the back and across over the track you've just come in on. I'll put up a little map to show you, and takes you up to some more spectacular views of the area. Suddenly you realise the train has come to a halt and we apparently aren't going any further, so a look down to the back of the train, and that's where you notice what's happened back at Ffestiniog. They've stuck a little shunter onto the rear end of the train, and with a quick bit of manoeuvring there's a driver in there, and we start going back down the spiral and back the way we've come to Ffestiniog, and this time towed by this little diesel shunter. So that was Ffestiniog station on the Ffestiniog Railway, narrow gauge, and now we're on the real size gauge, but no trains have gone through here since the 60s. It's Hadlow Road Station, Williston on the Wirral, and I've come here to talk about transport and technology. Right, I'm going to walk over here because the light's better, and ask Neil if he'll come over as well so we can see this wonderful camera from the 80s. And that is typically how it would be used, is that right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so on the shoulder, and you really look like a TV cameraman, because that's, to this day they still use big cameras like that, because they've got all the gizmos on.
Yeah.
And you captured all your family events with that.
That's right, yeah.
There we go. And what I'd like to do now, because we're doing this feature on the Ffestiniog Railway this month, if I got your permission, I want to use some footage that you took on that, on the Ffestiniog Railway in 1990.
Yes,
yeah.
No problem.
Discrete buttons on there, things that people do with their screen controls now.
Stop start.
Yeah.
You know, you've got your stop start once you record mode.
And it did an auto fade, I seem to remember from some of your footage.
Yes,
you would just do a fade out.
Yeah. You could set it.
Built-in microphone, which we tend not to have these days, and this hasn't got one. So I'm using this, heavily muffed, as you may have, if that's not a rude word these days. This is a device the broadcasters call a dead cat. It's supposed to stop the wind noise, so I hope it's working.
Oh, yeah.
So the two bits of footage, anyway. The resolution in those days was measured in lines, and 405 lines was a TV standard at the time. These were capable, well, the VHS tape standard was capable of about 300 lines. And the spec given on this one in the catalogue was, I think, 240 lines. So you're going to compare like with not very like. They're a different shape, of course, because we now film in widescreen. In those days, that was unheard of.
Oh yeah.
It was a thing of the cinema, wasn't it? It's where it's all started.
It's a Saticon tube.
Yes, that's the other thing. Saticon tube.
Which had to have a certain length.
Yeah, it's like a valve in many ways. It's a big glass thing, and it's inside the camera, whereas these days they have little CMOS sensors that are so tiny. So yeah, an amazing piece of kit, and for the time it really did capture your memories.
Yes, it did. 30-minute tapes. You got a cassette adapter which you took the tape out, put it in the cassette adapter, you could play it on a standard VHS.
Yes, because that's VHS-C. So can you eject that so we can have a look at the size of the tape?
Surely, yeah.
And in the meantime, we're looking at bits of the video, and what I'll do now is I'll reduce the size of your video from the 1990, so it's on a pixel for pixel basis. It sits alongside 4K, and you can see just how many more pixels you get. Right, so this is the I'll just walk into the camera a little bit. It's a tiny little tape for its day, and it fitted in the standard size VHS via an adapter, and so you could play it on your normal domestic video recorder. 30-minute tape, okay, that's yours. So that's the technical bit for this month. We do like a bit of technology. Well, so camera for camera, there it is. How things have changed.
Amazing.
Don't be deceived by the pictures, it's actually quite cold here. I know it looks sunny, but we've had some very mixed weather here in Porthmadog this weekend, and it's rained, it's sleeted, it's just about done everything except snow. It's still quite windy, but I've just found a spot that seems to be out of the wind. Some things to show you this month include another beach. We're going back up to the Wirral, and this is Hoylake. Okay, this month I'm going to touch on some technology. It's one of the subjects that I do cover regularly, and we're doing video technology. That is the gadgets I use to film. We're also going to have a bit of a look back into the archives, but not my archives. I'm going to try and get permission from a friend of mine to use some of his. Let me show you one of the gadgets that I have been filming with. If you see here, what you're seeing now is the drone filming me, Ruth filming me on the little pocket Osmo, and I'm standing in the middle and talking to you, but I'm going to actually fly this one over towards Hilbury Island. It's a hazy day and we're quite a long way, so it's not going to go very far, but just give you an idea of what we can do with this drone. Just going to make it go up now. We'll switch over to the camera on the drone. You can see where it's going. Turn left. Down a bit, coming lower, mainly so I can see where it is, because if it flies too high I'm looking into the sun and I can't see where it's going. It's going too far over towards West Kirby now, so I need to turn a bit to go out towards Hilbury Island, and it's probably going to run out of range. What should happen when it runs out of range is that it automatically comes home. Anyway, if I can turn it round. Difficult to see my screen to see where we're filming as well. Oh, there's some houses. So if I go forwards now, that should come back. No guarantees, of course, but it should be coming back this way. It's flying towards the houses. I need to turn right a bit. Very difficult to control it from this far away. The latest DJI gadgets have got goggles, VR headsets basically, and let me just use the return to base to bring it back.
Go home.
Yeah, I just sent a go home message to it. So wherever it is now, I can't see it, it'll come back to me. What it's supposed to do is go to a certain height and fly high and come back to me from there. So I can see a little speck in the sky a long way away. It should be coming back towards me now. It's just gaining height at the moment. Yes, I was saying the VR headset, there's a new drone that you can control with a VR headset, so in theory you should be able to see exactly where it is, because you've got the camera's eye view on your... You've got the camera's eye view in front of you, and it's just told me it's landing, so I'm standing back. It may well land on my camera bag. But it's an auto landing, it's on good old autopilot. slowing down for a safe landing. I think it's going to miss my kit bag. Yes. Well, as you will have gathered, I did get Neil's permission to use bits of his video of the Ffestiniog Railway from 1990, and this is how I shoot. A long shot of the platform. If I want to see the whole train, I move the camera over. So I have control from my editor to zoom in and see the person who's talking to the driver, or the name of the engine, anything else like that. Now compare that with Neil's video from 1990. I'll bring that up onto full screen, and you can see it's about a quarter of the number of pixels, but they didn't have pixels in those days, so it's not quite the same. The ideal thing is to walk up to someone with a camera like this, but he decided to zoom in and see if he can spot where the kids are. And his youngest daughter, he zooms in on her. If I digitally zoom in this picture, it doesn't get any better because it's not got that many lines or pixels or anything. So there's a lot of difference between 1990 and 2021. I suppose you'd expect that. You're always taking wide shots, as the camera people call them. So if you want to look at particular parts of a picture, you can basically slice it up. Go in on the mountains, too much grass in the whole picture. I might want to look at that building. Or I do have the ability to actually cut the picture up into pieces, and each piece can be a separate photo and can be treated separately. That means I can make it look as though I've got 4 cameras on one particular site. On the Ffestiniog Railway, it's full steam ahead. So back to Tanabulk anyway, where we've landed for refreshments, and I can now explain to you what happens with the trains going into the spiral. We were in the process of getting our sandwiches from the cafe at this time, and then we went out and stood by the gardens where you'd normally be able to sit, but the benches were still wet. All this time the diesel locomotive was pulling off our train. It was going back down the track and going onto the other line, which is where of course the second train had come in. And as the second train pulls away, and it's now going to head up to the spiral where we've been a while back, you'll notice that as the train leaves the station, just wait till the back end appears, that the diesel locomotive has attached itself to the rear of the train, and it's all ready to do its job, bringing this train back down from the spiral. And so our steam locomotive puts itself back at the other end of the train to head back to Porthmadog harbour, and we get back in our compartment and travel through the mountains of Snowdonia once again. Now, I mentioned earlier that the compartment trains are in use to give people the chance to stay isolated for COVID purposes, so you can have up to 6 people in these compartments as long as they're in your bubble, so it makes it more of a family outing perhaps. The Ffestiniog Railway has some trains that are very open inside the carriages, including a Pullman that we passed on the way back, and you can just about see through the windows that it is quite luxurious, and there are little tables where you can sit and get served with food and drink. Unfortunately, that kind of service is not available until all the restrictions are lifted.
The Ffestiniog Railway has its own car park for its passengers, and then there's a short walk along by the river to the harbour station. So that was the end of our journey, and we're back in Porthmadog. We're staying the night and we need some food, and we can't go and eat in a restaurant yet, so let's find a takeaway. So a quick look around the town, and we find a decent Chinese takeaway that's got good reviews, so we take some food back to our hotel. And that's it for this month.